Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was 30 when I first met Rachel. By then, life had already knocked me around more than I'd care to admit. I was a single dad raising a 7-year-old boy named Evan, doing my best to keep my world small and stable. After Evan's mother walked out, quietly, without warning, without even a note, I promised myself I wouldn't rush into anyone new. My days were simple: construction job during the week, pick Evan up from the after-school program at Pine Grove Elementary, home-cooked dinners, cartoons on the couch, and bedtime stories. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, and I was proud of that. Rachel changed all of that. She worked at the after-school program, one of the aides who helped the kids with crafts and homework. The first time I saw her, Evan was tugging at her hand, showing her a paper airplane he'd made. She leaned down, smiled big, and laughed like she genuinely cared. She was striking. Not in the obvious movie star way, but in the kind of way that made you feel seen. Long auburn hair, a calm softness to her voice, and these green eyes that seemed to lock on and not let go. "You're Evan's dad, right?" she asked one Friday when I came in. "Yeah," I said, a little caught off guard. "That's me." "He's great," she said, giving Evan's shoulder a squeeze. "Smart kid, funny too. You must be doing something right." It sounds small, but when you're a single parent, those little affirmations hit deep. We talked for a few minutes that day, then again the next week. By the third time, it felt like I'd known her longer than I had. I grew up in a small Ohio town, the kind where everybody knew your last name and at least 3 rumors about your family. My father left when I was 12. My mom raised me and my younger sister working double shifts at the diner, and I swore I'd never be the kind of man who abandoned his family. That promise became iron after Evan's mom left. So when Rachel came into our lives, I was careful, but not careful enough. Within a month, we were texting every night. She told me about her daughter, Lily, a 5-year-old in kindergarten. She'd had Lily young with a man she said wasn't in the picture anymore. "He was bad news," she whispered once. "I'm better off without him." Our first real date wasn't planned. She offered to watch Evan one Saturday while I worked overtime. When I came back, the kids were sprawled on the rug coloring, and Rachel was curled on the couch with a cup of tea like she belonged there. "You look exhausted," she said. "Sit." I made dinner. It was spaghetti, nothing fancy, but it was the first home-cooked meal I hadn't made myself in years. I can still remember the way the house smelled. Garlic, basil, warm bread. I should have been more cautious, but something about her fit so neatly into the cracks of my life that I didn't question it. By the second month, Rachel and I were inseparable. She spent nights at my place with Lily, and the kids got along well enough. My mother, though, was uneasy. 2 months, Mark," she said one evening on the phone. "That's all it's been. You can't just let a woman move in and play house with your boy. Not yet." "She's good for him, Mom. He smiles more when she's around." "Maybe so, but something's off. Call it a mother's intuition." I brushed it off because when you're lonely, intuition sounds a lot like paranoia. Within 3 months, Rachel and Lily had officially moved in. It started small. Evan began complaining about stomach aches. At first, I thought it was stress, maybe adjusting to having another kid in the house. But then I caught Rachel giving him medicine, tiny, clear capsules. "What's that?" I asked. "Just what the pharmacist recommended," she said smoothly. "It'll help his digestion. He told me to give them daily." Something in her tone was too practiced, but I didn't press. 2 weeks later, Evan's symptoms got worse. He was missing school, curled up on the couch, pale. My mom noticed right away. "Those aren't vitamins," she whispered, after finding the bottle Rachel kept tucked in the bathroom cabinet. "Mark, these are laxatives, strong ones. She's been giving these to him every day." When I confronted Rachel, she didn't miss a beat. No, you don't understand. The pharmacist said his stomach needed to be cleansed. It's called magic water, a natural remedy. It's better than all those chemicals doctors throw at kids. Her voice trembled just enough to make me doubt myself. I wanted to believe her, because the alternative, that she was hurting my son, was unthinkable. It was around this time that letters started arriving addressed to Rachel under a different last name. Rachel Henley. When I asked her, she laughed it off. "Oh, that's just from my past. Mail gets mixed up. I was married once a long time ago, but it didn't mean anything." But the letters kept coming and my gut started twisting tighter. So one night, after she fell asleep, I did something I'd never done before. I searched her name online. That's when I found the marriage license, not just one, several. By the age of 30, she'd been married 5 times. When I showed her the printout, she went pale. "Okay," she admitted. "Yes, I was married before. But those men, they were abusive, controlling, dangerous. I had to protect myself. That's why I didn't tell you. You'd judge me." Her tears were convincing, but my trust was cracked. A few months later, Rachel called me in a panic. "Mark, please, you have to help. My ex, Chris, he overdosed. He needs to get to the hospital." "Ex?" I asked. "What ex? You've never mentioned him." "There wasn't a reason to, okay? Please just help." Against my better judgment, I drove him there. Chris survived. Later, when I asked him about Rachel, he gave me a look I'll never forget. "She lies more easily than she breathes," he said. One night, drunk, she told me her husband Jared killed a man in Kentucky, for her. Said he did it because she asked him to. I thought she was messing with me, but now, I'm not so sure. I told myself it was crazy. Rumors, drunk ramblings, but I couldn't shake it. The final straw came when I caught her cheating. Another man's truck was parked outside the house while I was supposed to be at work. Evan was at my mom's that night, thank God. I threw her out. No yelling, no second chances, just cold fury. But when I sat down at the computer later, I saw her MySpace still logged in. Old messages were there, dozens from Jared's family. "Do you know what happened to him? He's missing. Please tell us if you've seen him." That was the moment my stomach dropped. Everything lined up. The multiple marriages, the lies, the strange stories. I went to the police. Detectives took my statement seriously. They tracked her down. By then, she'd already moved in with another man in Alabama. Under questioning, Rachel admitted she'd been married to Jared but claimed she left him after a custody fight. "I don't know what happened to him," she insisted. "He just disappeared." But when pressed about her next husband, Greg, her story shifted. Greg was angry, controlling. If something happened to Jared, it wouldn't surprise me. Finally, after hours of questioning, she broke. "Greg killed him," she whispered. "He shot him. I wasn't there, I swear I wasn't, but I know where it happened." She led police to Greg's old farm in Kentucky. At first, she acted confused, pretending not to know the land. Then she pointed to a patch near the tree line. They dug. The body was there, shot 6 times in the chest. Greg confessed, cutting a deal to testify against Rachel. He said she'd lured Jared there, fed him lies about reconciling, and watched as Greg pulled the trigger. In 2011, Greg was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Rachel stood trial the following year. Her defense tried to paint her as a victim, but the jury saw through it. She was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. I sat in the back of the courtroom the day the verdict was read. My hands clenched so tight they ached. She never looked at me. Not once. For weeks afterward, I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd let her into my home near my son. I replayed every moment, every laugh, every kiss, every whispered promise, and realized none of it was real. She was a mask, worn so convincingly that I almost believed it. Almost. Now, years later, I still check Evan's room at night, like I used to when he was little. just to make sure he's safe. Some habits you don't lose, some scars don't fade. Rachel is still in prison, and I'm still here, piecing life back together, learning to trust the silence again. I never used to think of myself as someone women would ruin themselves over. Growing up, I was the kind of guy most people forgot the moment I left a room. Quiet, polite, not particularly ambitious. My parents used to tell me I had a good smile, but I didn't see anything special when I looked in the mirror. By the time I turned 20, I was barely keeping afloat in Franklin Heights, a city that swallowed people whole. The rent was too high, jobs too scarce, and dreams too fragile. I worked nights at a host club called Velour, a glossy, velvet-draped place where the lighting was always flattering and the music was just loud enough to blur reality. If you've never heard of host clubs, here's the truth. It's all illusion. Women pay to be noticed, to be charmed, to be made to feel like they're the most important person in the room. We don't love them, not really, but we make them believe we do. That's how I met Hana Mori. It was October of 2018 when Hana first walked into Velour. She wasn't like the women I usually entertained. Most clients came in bold and loud, draped in designer labels that screamed money. Hana came in quietly, almost shyly, wearing a cream-colored sweater and jeans. Her hair was tied back, her eyes downcast. The manager, spotting her hesitation, guided her toward my table. "This is Noah," he said, "one of our best." I flashed the practiced smile I'd perfected over months. "Welcome to Velour. First time here?" She nodded, her voice soft. "Yes." I expected the usual routine. Order champagne, ask me flattering questions, laugh too loudly at my jokes. But Hana didn't do any of that. She just studied me, her eyes searching. "You don't seem like you enjoy this," she said finally. The words caught me off guard. No one had ever said that before. "Enjoy what?" I asked. Pretending. Her gaze didn't waver. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." I laughed, because what else could I do? She wasn't wrong. But at Velour, the trick was to never let the mask slip. Somehow she had seen through me instantly. That night, Hana ordered a bottle of mid-range wine. Nothing flashy. She didn't drink much, just sat there listening to me, asking questions that felt real. And when she left, she pressed a folded bill into my hand without making eye contact. I thought she'd never come back, but she did. Hana returned the very next night, and the night after. Within a week, she was a fixture at my table. She wasn't boisterous like the others. She just listened, sometimes speaking softly, sometimes not at all. But she spent. God, she spent. $2,000 in a single night, $5,000 another, $10,000 when she was in a mood to prove something. The other hosts teased me. "You hit the jackpot, Noah," they'd say, clapping me on the shoulder. "Don't let her go." But Hana wasn't like the others. She wasn't there for fun or status. She was there for me. And the way she looked at me, like I was the only person in the world worth her time, was addictive. At 20 years old, broke and drifting, it was easy to let her attention become oxygen. I didn't learn about Hana's past until later, but looking back, it explained everything. She was 23 when we met. She grew up in a small town 2 hours outside Franklin Heights. Her parents owned a modest grocery store, and by all accounts, Hana was a quiet child. Smart, reserved, obedient. But she was also lonely. Her older sister married early and moved away. Her parents worked constantly. Hana spent most of her childhood in silence, waiting for someone to notice her. When she turned 18, she moved to the city to work in a lounge. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than retail. Men liked her quiet demeanor. They tipped generously. But Hana was never truly comfortable with the nightlife world. She wasn't a drinker, wasn't flirtatious. She worked because it was survival. She had saved a decent amount by the time she met me. But once I entered her orbit, that savings drained like water down a sink. By December, Hannah wasn't content to see me only at velour. She started waiting outside after my shifts. She'd offer to drive me home, pay for late-night dinners, book hotel rooms. At first, I told myself it was harmless. But then came the night she confessed. We were sitting in her car, parked under the yellow glow of a street lamp. The heater hummed, fogging the windows. She gripped the steering wheel tightly before finally speaking. "Noah, I love you." The words hung between us, heavy and fragile. I should have stopped it there. I should have reminded her this was just a job. But instead, I stayed silent. And silence, I learned, can be as dangerous as any promise. By early 2019, Hannah had drained her savings, yet she kept spending on me. When I asked where the money came from, she smiled faintly. "I'm just going on dates," she said. I didn't press, but I knew what she meant. In Franklin Heights, there's a shadow industry. Men pay women to visit them under the guise of companionship. Technically, full service is illegal, but what happens behind closed doors isn't monitored. Hannah had sworn to friends she'd never cross that line. Yet here she was, crossing it, for me. I should have felt guilt, and I did, fleetingly, but I also felt relief, because her choices meant I didn't have to change mine. In April, Hannah started talking about a future. "Quit velour," she begged one night, clutching my hand across the restaurant table. "We can move in together. I'll cover everything. You won't have to pretend anymore." Her eyes were wide, desperate, searching for reassurance. I lied. Yeah, one day never came. In May, Hannah signed a lease for an apartment on Willow Lane. She put down a massive deposit, money I knew she didn't have. Then she bought me a brand new silver sedan. When she handed me the keys, her voice shook with excitement. "It's ours, Noah." "Everything is ours now," I smiled, kissed her forehead, and drove us away. But inside, I felt the walls closing in. On May 20th, we went shopping for furniture. Hannah was giddy, holding swatches of fabric up to the light, chattering about curtains and coffee tables. I scrolled through my phone, barely listening. By the time we got back, I collapsed on the couch, sleeping through the evening. She sat in silence, her dreams unraveling piece by piece. 3 days later, she broke. On May 23rd, Hannah called me in the morning. "You're coming today, right?" "Yeah," I mumbled, "around noon." But noon came and went, and I didn't show. I'd gone out with another client. When I finally arrived around 3, Hannah's smile was strained. She asked if I wanted food, if I wanted to shower. I brushed her off. "I'm taking a nap." What I didn't know was that she had gone through my phone. She had seen the pictures. Proof of the betrayal she'd always suspected. When I woke up, it wasn't to sunlight or her voice. It was to pain. A searing knife in my stomach. I gasped, eyes flying open. Blood stained the sheets. Hannah was above me, her face pale, her hands trembling around the knife handle. "Do you love me?" she whispered. Terror surged through me. My vision blurred. "Yes," I choked. "Yes, Hannah. I love you. Please." Stop. Her expression softened, just for a moment. That hesitation saved my life. I shoved her back, grabbed my phone, and staggered to the door. By the time I reached the lobby, I collapsed, blood pooling beneath me. The last thing I saw before blacking out was Hannah kneeling beside me, cigarette in hand, casually calling someone as if nothing had happened. I woke up in the hospital 5 days later. Machines beeped around me. Tubes tethered me to life. The doctor said I had a 20% chance of survival. Somehow I beat the odds. Hannah was arrested at the scene. Witnesses said she was calm, even smiling as police led her away. When asked why, she said, "I thought that was the only way he would stay with me." In December 2019, Hannah stood trial. I testified, my stomach scar still healing, my nerves still raw. The prosecutor called her selfish, dangerous, obsessive. The defense painted her as fragile, consumed by love. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I surprised everyone. "I don't hate her," I said quietly. "I don't even want her punished." "I understand why she did it," the courtroom murmured. But the judge shook his head. "Her intent to kill is undeniable," he said. "Prison time is unavoidable." Hannah was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months. Hannah is out now, or soon will be. Sometimes late at night I think about her. About the way she looked at me like I was her entire world. About how I let her build a fantasy I never had the courage to destroy. People ask if I'd ever see her again. The truth? I don't know. Because even now, years later, I still hear her voice when I close my eyes. "Do you love me?" And I don't know if my answer has changed. I never thought moving in with a friend of a friend would end up being one of the worst decisions of my 20s. At the time, it seemed almost perfect. Rent in Madison Heights was ridiculous. Any decent one-bedroom near downtown was out of reach for me. I was 25, working a steady but not spectacular job at a marketing firm, and my boyfriend Matt and I weren't ready to live together yet. He was finishing his teaching credential, staying with 2 other guys, and I liked having my own space. So, when a mutual acquaintance introduced me to Harper, I thought I got lucky. Harper had just signed a 2-year lease on a sunny 2-bedroom apartment above a coffee shop on River Street, but she couldn't afford it alone. She needed someone who could move in right away. At first glance, Harper seemed tolerable. She wasn't someone I'd call a friend exactly, but she had an easy laugh, a laid-back personality, and, most importantly, she worked nights as a bartender. I figured we'd hardly see each other, which is ideal for roommates. There was only one real rule we both agreed to when I signed on. No one gets a key without both of us approving. Simple, fair, and honestly comforting. I'd had friends who'd lived with roommates that gave boyfriends, cousins, and random buddies free access to the apartment, and it always ended in disaster. I wasn't about to risk it. For the first 6 months, things were okay. Harper was messy, like really messy. Her side of the living room always had fast food bags, laundry spilling out of hampers, and half-finished iced lattes that grew their own little colonies of mold if I didn't throw them out. She left hair dye stains in the sink, used my expensive shampoo even after I asked her not to, and once borrowed one of my dresses to a party that came back ripped at the hem and smelling like cigarettes. But I adapted. I bought a mini fridge and kept it in my room so she couldn't eat the food I actually cared about. I started bringing my good skincare products to work and storing them in my desk so they wouldn't mysteriously disappear. And I invested in a bedroom lock. All of that made Harper a bad roommate, sure, but she had one saving grace. She was quiet at night. When she worked late, she tiptoed in without slamming doors or blasting music. When she had friends over, they usually went out after pre-gaming instead of staying. For someone like me who needed her sleep to function, that was worth its weight in gold. I told myself I could deal with the rest, until she broke the one rule we swore would never be broken. It started on an unremarkable Saturday morning in early March. Matt had just left after spending the night, and I was planning a lazy day, laundry, cleaning, maybe a long shower and a nap. Harper was at work until mid-afternoon, so I had the apartment to myself. I was in the middle of folding a load of towels, still wearing a robe, hair tied up, when I heard the sharp metallic click of our front door unlocking. I froze. No one had a key except Harper and me. The door swung open, and standing there was a thin, pale guy in a dark trench coat. His eyes flicked around the room before landing on me. He didn't smile. He didn't say hello. He just stood there. My stomach dropped. "What the hell?" I screamed, grabbing the first thing within reach, the oversized bottle of laundry detergent. I hurled it at him with everything I had. It hit his shoulder and splashed blue liquid across his coat. "Jesus," he yelped, stumbling back. Wait, it's okay. I'm Harper's boyfriend." "I don't care who the hell you are," I shrieked, scrambling into my bedroom and slamming the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled twice before locking it. "Get out or I'm calling the cops and my boyfriend." There was a long silence. Then, the sound of the door clicking shut again. He left. My heart was still hammering when I called Harper at work. "Who the hell was that?" I snapped as soon as she picked up. "What? Who?" she said, her voice already defensive. "A strange guy just let himself into our apartment. He said he's your boyfriend. He had a key, Harper." Oh, that's just Ryan," she said, her tone shifting into this dreamy, gushing register. "We've been talking for weeks, and I wanted him to come visit, but his bus got here early and I was still on shift, so You just gave him a key?" Without telling me. My voice cracked between anger and disbelief. "It's not a big deal. He's sweet, I promise. I mailed him the key last week. He was just supposed to wait for me until I got off work." "Harper, you let some guy you've known for 2 weeks into our apartment? A stranger? While I was home, half-dressed?" She sighed, irritated. "God, you're overreacting. He's not a stranger to me." "Do you know his last name?" A pause. "Not exactly." I hung up. Within the hour, Matt came over and helped me pack. Essentials only: clothes, toiletries, laptop, important documents. He loaded them into his car while I stood in the hallway, pulse still high, feeling like I'd been violated in some deep, invisible way. I moved into his place that night. The next week, I came back during Harper's shift to grab the rest of my stuff. I expected awkwardness, maybe a half-hearted apology. What I got instead was Harper slamming the door behind me and yelling, "You're so dramatic, Emmy. You embarrassed me in front of Ryan. Do you know he almost pressed charges for what you did to him? You're lucky he didn't." My jaw dropped. Pressed charges? For me defending myself from some random man barging in while I was half naked? "You assaulted him with detergent," I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You've got to be kidding me." She crossed her arms, glaring. "It's your fault for freaking out. If you can't handle adult relationships, maybe you shouldn't live with other people." Something in me snapped then. I didn't yell back. I didn't argue. I just looked at her with a kind of cold clarity I'd never felt before. "Fine," I thought. "You want to play games? I can play too." Here's what Harper didn't realize. The lease was in my name only. Her credit had been so trashed that no landlord in the good part of town would sign with her. The only reason she was living here at all was because I had co-signed and taken responsibility, which meant she wasn't my equal tenant. She was a subletter, and that gave me power. I could have evicted her, sure. But eviction is messy, takes time, and frankly, it wasn't nearly as satisfying as what I eventually decided to do. I put up an ad on Craigslist. Room available, River Street, Madison Heights large 2-bedroom above coffee shop. Lease runs through next summer. Rent, $1,100, but I'll cover the deposit, sublet fee, and first 2 months if you move in with existing tenant. One caveat: tenant is messy, like very messy. Steals food, sometimes borrows clothes without asking. Not malicious, just sloppy. If you're okay with that, this is a steal. It wasn't exactly flattering, but I wasn't about to trick some innocent person into misery. If anyone responded, I wanted them to know. For 2 weeks, I got half-hearted inquiries. Then came one that stopped me cold. His name was Trevor. He said he didn't care about messy roommates. He ordered takeout and hated leftovers. He wasn't worried about anyone stealing clothes either. I don't even notice mess half the time. His email read, "Honestly, I'd prefer it that way." But then he added something else. "I like to date around. Not looking for anything serious, but I have a steady rotation of friends with benefits. Sometimes they stay over for a few nights, sometimes longer. So the whole key thing isn't a deal breaker for me." I smiled as I read it. "Harper, meet your match." Trevor passed the background check, filled out the paperwork, and within the month, he had the keys. The first time Harper called me about him, her voice was shrill with panic. Emmy, there's some guy here. He says he lives here. What the hell is going on? That's right, I said calmly. His name's Trevor. I sublet your lease. Everything's official. You can't just... I can. And I did. Call the leasing office if you don't believe me. She screamed something incoherent before hanging up. For the next few weeks, my phone blew up with voicemails. Some were furious, accusing me of betrayal. Others were pitiful, pleading with me to come back to fix this. But I ignored them. And then, silence. Until one afternoon, she finally called again. I picked up, curious. Her voice was shaky. Emmy, I can't take this anymore. Trevor brings home girls every other night. Sometimes guys, sometimes 2 at a time. They stay for days. I can't even walk into the kitchen without running into strangers. And he doesn't clean anything. Ever. I'm doing everything like some maid. I can't move out. My parents won't take me back and no one else will rent to me. He says if I stop paying rent, he'll change the locks and throw my stuff out. I feel like I'm going insane. I listened quietly, letting her words spill out. When she finally stopped, I said evenly, "Yeah, having a roommate who gives out keys to strangers without your consent is a bitch, isn't it?" I hung up before she could answer. I never thought the boy I fell for at 16 would end up destroying everything that I was. Back then, my world was small. I was a junior at Westbrook High in a sleepy Tennessee town where Friday night football was the only thing people looked forward to. I was a cheerleader, not the captain, not even particularly good, but I liked being part of the group. My parents thought it kept me out of trouble. That was where I met him, Daniel Reese. Daniel was a senior wide receiver, tall, athletic, the kind of guy teachers excused for being late because he had practice. Girls whispered about him in the locker room, and the guys on the team looked up to him. He had a way of smiling that felt like he'd picked you out of a crowd just to make you feel special. The first time he came up to me after practice, helmet tucked under his arm, sweat dripping down his face, my stomach fluttered. "Hey," he said, grinning. "You're Ava, right?" I nodded, trying not to blush. "You were louder than the rest of the squad tonight." "Could hear you over the whole field," I laughed nervously. "That's probably because I can't stay on beat." He chuckled and kept the conversation going like we'd known each other for months. That was Daniel's gift. He noticed you. He made you feel like you mattered. My parents liked him immediately. When he came over for dinner, he shook my dad's hand firmly, told my mom her lasagna was the best he'd ever had, and asked about my college plans. To them, he was a dream boyfriend. Polite, charming, respectful. But the boy my parents saw wasn't the boy I learned to fear. At first, it was subtle. "You don't need that much makeup," he'd say, brushing a thumb across my cheek. "You look better natural." Or, "That skirt's a little short." Don't want other guys getting the wrong idea. I thought it was protective, maybe even sweet. But then he started waiting outside my work shifts for hours, leaning on his car like a watchdog. If I wanted to hang out with friends, he'd demand, "Who's going? What time? What are you wearing? Why didn't you invite me?" When I told him I was tired of the constant questions, he'd sulk. "I just worry about you, Ava. Don't you get it? I'm the only one who actually cares." I repeated those lines back to myself at night like excuses. My friends weren't convinced. Tyler, my best friend since middle school, confronted me one night after practice. "He's choking you, Ava. This isn't normal." I shook my head, annoyed. "You don't know him like I do. He just loves me too much." That's all. But love isn't supposed to feel like a cage. The cycle lasted 2 years. We'd fight. He'd accuse me of ignoring him, flirting, dressing wrong. We'd break up and I'd feel this brief relief, like I could breathe again. Then days later, he'd show up at my door with flowers, tear-streaked eyes, begging for another chance. "You're my world, Ava," he'd whisper. "I don't know who I am without you." And I'd cave. Again. 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 Until the spring of my senior year. I told him it was over for good. No more tears, no more flowers. I was leaving for college in the fall, and I wanted to start clean. This time, he didn't cry. He just smiled, this cold, eerie smile. "You'll regret this," he said softly. A month later, after Westbrook's big playoff win, the school was electric. Cars honked in the streets. Kids shouted from windows. A teammate hosted a house party, and I went with friends, eager to just feel like a normal teenager again. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Daniel. I was laughing, dancing, eating chips straight from the bag when my phone buzzed. "Go to your car with your keys. Go alone." The number wasn't saved. My stomach dropped. "Who is this?" I typed. No response. I showed Tyler. "Come with me?" We slipped outside into the cool night. The driveway was crammed with cars, headlights reflecting against the trees. My Civic sat quiet under a street lamp. No one was there. "See?" Tyler said. "Prank." We turned back. My phone buzzed again. What part of alone wasn't clear? Chills raced across my skin. "Yeah, I'm not," I typed quickly, "'cause I don't know who this is." The reply came instantly. "I don't want to have to hurt a loved one." My throat went dry. "We have someone you care about. If you don't comply, they get hurt. If you call the cops, they die." My fingers trembled. This has to be Daniel, right?" Tyler frowned. "Ignore it. Block them." But the texts kept coming. "Drive to the bottom of the driveway. 11:50. No one else." I snapped, typing. "I know this is one of Daniel's friends. Stop it. I'm no one's friend. He's in a ditch beside your house. If you care, check." Tyler drove me home. My heart hammered against my ribs. And there he was, Daniel, face down in the grass near our yard. When he sat up holding his head, I felt sick. They kidnapped me," he stammered. Tyler rolled his eyes. "You're full of it." And maybe he was, but when another text came, "That was your warning. Next time will be worse." I couldn't shake the cold in my chest. The next day passed quietly, almost too normal. I told myself it was Daniel messing with me, that I should just block everything and move on. That evening, as I was changing in my room, I saw him. A man walking down the street, his face hidden by the shadow of his hood. He slowed, turned, and crossed my lawn toward our door. My hands shook as I texted the one person I swore I'd never rely on again. "I hate you, but I need you right now. Someone's outside. I'm coming. Stay inside." Minutes later, headlights swept across the driveway. Daniel jumped out, running toward the door. My mom, Claire, pulled in just behind him. "What the hell is going on?" she snapped, spotting him. "She asked me to come," Daniel said quickly. I wanted to scream, but my mom stepped between us. "Daniel, leave. Now. You're not welcome here." That night I barely slept. Around midnight, 2 sharp bangs jolted me awake, like a door slamming. My dad, Peter, got up, checked the house, and came back shaking his head. Probably the wind. I drifted back into uneasy sleep. The next morning, my mom came to wake me. "Ava, time for school." No response. She shook me. My chest didn't rise. My eyes didn't open. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. 2 bullet holes pierced the wall by my bed. 2 casings lay in the grass outside. My father's door slams had been gunshots. The investigation closed in fast. Daniel's stolen grandfather's gun. His ridiculous grief posts online. His friends Mason and Joel secretly recording him admitting he just meant to scare her. Police caught him near the Tennessee River, gun in hand, ready to toss it. In court he cried, begged, said he loved me, said he never meant to hurt me. But the jury took only 4 hours. Guilty of murder. Life in prison. Westbrook never looked the same. My parents couldn't walk into the grocery store without whispers following them. My cheer squad retired my uniform number. Tyler stopped coming to games. People called it a tragedy, a senseless act of jealousy. But to me, if I could still speak, it was a story of warnings ignored, of love twisted into possession, of a girl who thought she could save him until she couldn't save herself. I never thought something as simple as saying hello to a stranger could change my entire life. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was, how desperately I wanted to believe the best in people, even when every instinct was telling me to back away. My name is Lena Hartman, and this all started during my second year at Redwood University, a medium-sized college tucked between the hills of northern Michigan. I wasn't the type to go out much. Most of my friends were teammates from the club volleyball team, and when I wasn't at practice, I was usually either in class, studying in the library, or FaceTiming my family back in Traverse City. I was focused, maybe a little too much so. That's probably why when I first noticed Darren, I didn't immediately label him as trouble. He was sitting outside the corner cafe that students passed on the way to campus. Long hair tied back into a rough bun, layered in clothes that looked like they had been worn for weeks. He had this old duffel bag at his feet and a half-crushed paper cup in his hand. Most people walked right past him without looking, but every once in a while someone would toss a coin or crumpled bill into the cup. The first time he caught my eye, it wasn't because he asked for money. It was because he was humming. Not just humming, but full-on singing under his breath. Something classical. Something I didn't recognize, but it stopped me for just long enough that he looked up and met my eyes. "Spare change?" he asked, almost shyly. I hesitated, then fished $1 from my wallet. "Thanks, sunshine," he said, flashing me a crooked smile. That should have been it. A forgettable moment. But for some reason, I felt a pang of sympathy. My mom always said I had a soft spot for strays, dogs, cats, people. I couldn't help it. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Darren more and more. Sometimes I'd walk past him without stopping. Sometimes I'd give him another $1. Once he said, "You play volleyball, right?" And I froze, surprised. "Yeah, how did you know that?" "You've got the shoes for it," he replied, pointing at my sneakers with a grin. "I almost played baseball in college. Got scouted for a scholarship. But, you know, life happens," I remember saying softly. "Sorry to hear that." He shrugged. "Your loss is my gain. Means I get to talk to you." Instead, I laughed it off, not thinking much of it. But soon, Darren started recognizing me. He'd wave when I passed by, and sometimes I'd wave back. I never stayed long, just a quick hello before heading to class. At one point, I even introduced him to my academic advisor, Dr. McKay, when we ran into him together. I didn't think anything of it, but after we walked away, Dr. McKay pulled me aside. "Lena," he said, lowering his voice, "I don't mean to overstep, but how do you know that man? He's just a guy I see on the corner sometimes." I give him $1 now, and then his expression tightened. I wouldn't encourage that friendship. I've seen students get tangled in dangerous situations before. People living on the street often have histories we don't understand. Criminal backgrounds, addictions. Please, be cautious. I nodded, but I brushed it off. I didn't want to see Darren that way. To me, he was just a lonely guy who made bad choices. But things started changing. The next week, when I stopped to say hello, Darren was different, irritable, agitated. His words came out sharp. "So, your boyfriend? You two live together or what?" I blinked. "Boyfriend? I don't—" "The guy you were walking with yesterday," he interrupted. "The one you introduced me to." I frowned. That wasn't my boyfriend. That was my advisor. For school immediately, his face softened. His grin returned. "Oh, good. Thought maybe I scared him off. Don't want to get in the way of something serious, you know?" I forced a laugh, unsettled but unsure how to respond. Not long after, Darren started giving me things. A wild flower from the sidewalk, a bottle of soda he probably pulled from somewhere, a beaded bracelet. "Just something to make you smile," he'd say. My roommate Kelsey wrinkled her nose when I showed her. "That's kinda weird, Lena. He's not just some random guy anymore, he's watching you. It's harmless, I insisted. It's just a flower. What's the big deal? But Dr. McKay didn't think it was harmless either. When he asked about Darren again, concern etched on his face. I realized maybe I needed to take a step back. So I stopped lingering, stopped giving money, stopped making eye contact, and then the pandemic hit. Classes moved online, and I went home to stay with my parents. 3 weeks into lockdown, while scrolling Instagram, I came across a video a friend posted. Someone was singing opera in the background. I froze. It was Darren. The location tag wasn't near campus. It was near my hometown. At first, I brushed it off. Coincidence. But a few days later, another girl from my college messaged me. This is going to sound weird, but I feel like I should tell you. I was downtown and a man asked me about you. He knew your name, that you play volleyball, your major. I didn't tell him anything, but it freaked me out. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. When I asked what he looked like, she confirmed my fear. It was Darren. I tried to rationalize. Maybe he just saw her sweatshirt with our school logo and asked around. Maybe he was just curious. But the unease in my stomach wouldn't go away. When restrictions lifted, I moved back near campus. And there he was, back on the same corner, waiting. Only now he didn't even bother asking for money. He just stared at me when I passed. I stopped walking that way, stopped leaving my apartment unless I had to. By winter break, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to stay with my brother, Ethan, in Ohio. His roommate had moved home, so there was space for me. For the first time in months, I felt safe. Until the 9th day. I woke up early to voices at the front door. Ethan's voice, calm, but tight. Another voice, deep, familiar. I crept to the hallway. Ethan turned, his face pale. "What the hell, Lena?" he hissed. "Mom and Dad are going to flip. You brought some 40-year-old guy here, during a pandemic? He says he's your boyfriend." My stomach dropped. "What? Number? I don't have a boyfriend. I don't know what you're talking about." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "He used your name. Said you had a fight, and he came to make it right." I shoved past him and looked through the peephole, and I almost didn't recognize him. Darren had shaved, showered, and was wearing clean clothes. He looked like a different man, but it was him. Panic seized my chest. I don't know him like that," I whispered. "He's just some guy from campus." "Ethan, don't let him in." Ethan squared his shoulders and went back to the door. "She's not here. She left this morning," but Darren's voice was steady, eerie. "You're lying." "I heard her. Tell her I'm sorry. I cleaned up for her. I'll take her anywhere she wants to go. Just tell her to come out." I was frozen, trembling in the hallway. Ethan tried shutting the door, but Darren moved to the window, pressing his face to the glass. His eyes bulged, wild, disconnected. He started pounding. "That's my girlfriend. You can't keep her in there. Let her out." Ethan cursed under his breath. "Call 911 now." I fumbled with my phone, dialing with shaking fingers. Before dispatch could pick up, the sound of shattering glass cut through the house. Darren had punched straight through the window, blood streaking down his arm. He screamed my name. "Lena! Baby, I'm coming!" I sobbed, backing into the kitchen as Ethan lunged for the door, trying to push him back out. For a moment, everything was chaos. The struggle, the screaming, the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. The dispatcher's calm voice was the only tether I had. "Help is on the way. Stay on the line." Minutes felt like hours, but finally, flashing lights lit up the driveway. Officers pulled Darren off the porch, cuffing him as he shouted, "She's my girlfriend. She needs me. You're keeping her from me." They even handcuffed Ethan for a moment, making sure he wasn't holding me against my will. The humiliation in his eyes made me want to crumble. As they led Darren away, blood dripping from his shredded hand, he suddenly smiled at me through the patrol car window. And then, he started singing. Opera, loud and manic, echoing down the quiet suburban street. That was the last time I saw him, but his voice still haunts me. From that day on, I learned something I wish I'd known earlier. Being kind doesn't mean being careless. Not everyone you help wants just $1. Some want much, much more, and sometimes they'll follow you anywhere to get it. I never thought a chance encounter on a school bus could change the course of my entire life, but that's exactly what happened when I was 14. Back then, I was just starting at Greenfield High. I grew up in a small suburban town called Ashbrook, a quiet place where people still left their doors unlocked, neighbors waved from their porches, and the biggest scandal was when someone's dog got loose and terrorized the mailman. I was shy, bookish, the kind of girl who tucked herself into the corner seat on the bus with earbuds in, hoping nobody noticed me. That first week of riding the bus, I could feel eyes on me. You know that prickling at the back of your neck when someone's watching? It was that. Every morning I'd slide into my seat, and after a few minutes I'd get that uncomfortable awareness. I turned around once, then twice, and both times caught sight of a boy sitting 2 rows back. Brown curly hair, pale skin, eyes that darted away too quickly when I noticed him. One morning he leaned forward as the bus rattled down Oakwood Lane. "You've got really nice hair," he said suddenly, his voice low, almost hesitant. I pulled one earbud out. Thanks." "And your t-shirt," he added. "It's cool. So, will you be my girlfriend?" I blinked at him, thinking maybe I misheard. I don't even know you." His face fell a little, but then he smiled as if my rejection hadn't even registered. "That's okay. You will." That was the first time I spoke to David Halloran. Everyone called him Dave. At first, I thought he was just awkward. Lots of kids were. But over the next few weeks, I noticed him everywhere. In the cafeteria, leaning against a pillar in the hallway, slipping into my photography class, though I was sure he hadn't signed up for it at the beginning of the semester. My friends reassured me. "Dave's harmless," said Marissa, one of the cheerleaders. "He's just different." My brother's friends with him. They say he's the nicest guy in the world. But nice people don't lurk around corners. Nice people don't pop up when you're walking home and ask, "Can I hug you?" while reaching out with arms before you can even answer. I started to avoid him. "Come on, just a hug," he'd say, laughing as he tried to tickle me in the hall. "You're my girlfriend, right?" Girlfriend's hug. "You're not my boyfriend, Dave," I said one afternoon, shoving past him. My voice trembled, but I wanted it firm. His smile didn't fade. "Not yet." The notes. The first note showed up in my locker a month later. One word. Always. At first I thought it was some dumb prank, maybe from Marissa or Kayla, who loved scribbling inside jokes on sticky notes. But then another came the next day. Same word. Always. By the end of that week, there were 5 of them. One had a little heart drawn next to it. Another had my name. My stomach dropped the day I opened my locker and found an envelope inside. I pulled out 6 photos, pictures of me walking down the hall, sitting in the cafeteria, tying my shoes on the front steps of the school, all taken from a slight distance, all of me completely unaware. That's when I knew. It had to be Dave. The night it got real, I was curled in bed on a Sunday watching TV. My mom was downstairs finishing laundry, and the house smelled faintly of dryer sheets. The window beside my bed was cracked open a little, letting in the early fall air. That's when I heard it. "Hey, Emma." I froze. The voice came from outside, just beneath the window. I sat up slowly, heart hammering, and glanced through the blinds. There he was. Dave, standing on the patch of grass beside my window, hands stuffed into his hoodie pocket. "I saw you walking home the other day," he said softly, like he was telling me a secret. I figured I'd stop by. Just to talk, I yanked the blinds shut and shouted, "Go away." "You don't mean that," he called. "I know you don't." "I'll come back." He left before my mom got upstairs, and when I told her, she frowned but shook her head. "He's just a boy with a crush, honey." It's strange, yes, but he's not dangerous. We'll keep an eye out, but she didn't understand. The notes, the photos, the way he followed me. The next morning at school, I went to Mr. Kincaid, Mr. K, everyone called him. He taught history and photography. He'd seen Dave shadowing me in class. When I told him everything, his face darkened. "You did the right thing coming to me," he said. "You're not overreacting. I'll take care of this." He called the guidance counselor, and the two of them sat Dave down that afternoon. I wasn't there, but word spread fast. By the end of the day, Dave was furious. I found out just how furious in the lobby 2 mornings later. I was walking in when he stormed up to me clutching a rose. He shouted loud enough for the entire student body to hear. "You broke my heart." He hurled the rose against the wall. The glass vase shattered into 100 shards that scattered across the tile. "This is your fault," he screamed, "just like the rose." Broken. Mr. K rushed in and pulled him back, shielding me. 2 days later, Dave dropped out of school. For 8 years, I didn't see him. 8 years later. I was 22 when it happened again. By then, I was living alone in a little apartment near downtown Ashbrook, working at a small design studio. My life was calm, stable. Dave was nothing more than a ghost from middle school, a nightmare I thought I'd outgrown. One Saturday, I craved mac and cheese from this place called Penny's Kitchen, a popular spot on Main Street. I walked in, stood in line, glanced behind the counter, and my stomach turned to ice. Dave was there. Same curly hair, just a little longer. Same eyes. He looked older, sure, but unmistakably him. He was wiping down the counter, and when he turned, our eyes met. I panicked. My hands shook. But just then, another cashier opened a register. "Next in line," she said, and I practically sprinted over to her. I left without ever speaking to him. My pulse didn't settle until I was back home with the door locked. But I should have known. To him, my visit wasn't a coincidence. It was a sign. That night, I got a Facebook friend request from Dave Halloran. I deleted it instantly. 3 nights later, I was walking home from work. It was late, the streets mostly empty, the air heavy with the smell of rain. As I turned onto my block, I saw him, standing by the side of my house. I froze. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even step forward. Just stood there, watching. I bolted inside, locked the door, and called the police. They listened, sent a patrol car to circle the neighborhood, promised they'd keep an eye out. But nothing came of it. He hadn't trespassed. He hadn't hurt me. Just stood there. The patrols came the next 2 nights. Then they stopped. That's when the knocking began. Soft at first, a tap against the living room window, a gentle rap on the back door. 2 or 3 nights a week, never consistent. I never looked, never answered, but I knew it was him. 2 weeks into the knocking, I found an envelope wedged into my screen door. Inside were the old photos from middle school, me at my locker, me in the cafeteria, me tying my shoe, and a note, always. That same afternoon, I discovered my car had been scratched. Across the back bumper, carved deep into the paint, was one word, always. Something inside me snapped. I drove to the police station, shaking with rage, filed another report, and stood outside the sign to take a picture. Then, reckless, I opened Facebook and messaged Dave directly. "Leave me alone. The police are involved. If you keep this up, it will only get worse for you." His reply came almost instantly. "You're right." And then, nothing. No more notes, no more knocks, no more sightings. Dave disappeared. It's been 5 years since then. I still check my locks 3 times before bed. I still get nervous walking alone at night. Sometimes I wonder where he went. Did he move away? Did he finally give up? Or is he waiting, biding his time, convinced that someday I'll change my mind? I'll never know. But if you ask me if the mac and cheese was worth it, definitely not. I never thought one Facebook post could change my life. At the time, I was 21 years old, a junior at Fairmont University. I was the kind of student who floated through classes just enough to get by, saving most of my energy for hobbies that didn't pay the bills, like performing at open mics, going to indie film screenings, and hanging out at this dingy improv club off campus. Every Thursday night, the place hosted a show called Improv Night at the Laugh House. It wasn't glamorous. The walls smelled faintly of beer, the folding chairs squeaked if you leaned too far back, and the ceiling tiles were water-stained. But I loved it. That cramped little theater was my weekly escape from lectures, deadlines, and the general chaos of college life. Usually I went with my best friend Jordan, but that semester Jordan was in Spain for a study abroad program. I didn't want to sit alone, so I threw out an open invite in one of those big university Facebook groups. My post read something like, "Headed to the Laugh House improv show tonight. Anyone want to join? Open invite." I figured maybe an acquaintance would bite. At worst, I'd delete the post after getting no replies. But then, a message pinged my inbox. Her name was Lila Moreno. Her profile photo was simple. Her sitting in a cafe, wearing a dark green sweater, her brown hair tucked behind her ears. She wasn't posing, just looking at the camera with a half smile. "I've always wanted to go there," she wrote. "Mind if I tag along?" I stared at her profile for a second. We didn't have any mutual friends. She wasn't in my classes. She seemed like a total stranger. But I was 21, bored and curious. "Sure," I replied. "I'll be outside the theater at 7:30. When I got there, she was already waiting. She stood just off to the side of the entrance, clutching a paper cup of coffee, glancing around like she was worried she'd been stood up. "Alex?" she asked when I approached. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "And you must be Lila." Her face relaxed. "Good. I wasn't sure you'd show inside." The show was the usual mix of awkward jokes and surprisingly sharp improv. We whispered little comments back and forth, stifling laughter when a skit went off the rails. Lila had a quick wit. Her humor was dry, sometimes a little cutting, but never cruel. Afterward, I asked, "Want to grab another coffee?" "Definitely," she said without hesitation. That coffee turned into 3 hours of conversation at a cafe near campus. She told me she was majoring in psychology, originally from Albany, and that she didn't really have close friends here. I told her about my obsession with stand-up, my half-baked dream of doing comedy full-time, and how I'd been struggling to balance school with everything else. By the time we walked back to campus, I knew I wanted to see her again. Coffee meetups became late-night diner runs. Diner runs became Netflix binges in my dorm room. Within a few weeks, we were officially dating. She was funny, affectionate, and seemed genuinely interested in me. She teased me about bombing in improv, held my hand in public, and made my dull routine feel lighter. But she was also private. Whenever I asked about her family, she'd change the subject. "It's complicated," she'd say. When I asked about old friends, she was vague. At the time, I didn't push it. Everyone has parts of their past they don't want to unpack. It wasn't until the first message that I realized how strange things would get. One night, while scrolling Facebook, I noticed a message request. It was from a guy named Daniel Cross. "You don't deserve Lila. You're hurting her. She needs someone who actually understands her, not some selfish clown like you." I frowned, confused. I had never heard of this guy. I showed Lila. "Do you know him?" Her face tightened. "Yeah, he's just someone I used to hang around with. He's a jerk. I don't talk to him anymore. Please ignore him." That was it. No further details. I was irritated, but not alarmed. Jealous guys existed. Maybe he was an ex who couldn't let go. I blocked him and forgot about it. At least I thought I did. A couple weeks later, another message popped up. This time from a woman named Megan Shaw. "Daniel's right, you know. You're toxic for her. You're holding her back. She belongs with people who actually understand her." Attached was a blurry photo. Two people kissing, their faces obscured. "That's Lila and Daniel," Megan wrote. "From last summer. She's been lying to you," I showed Lila. Her jaw clenched. "That's bullshit. They're obsessed with me. Please don't listen to them." Then came Ryan Ellis. His profile picture showed a guy skateboarding into a sunset. He admitted he had feelings for Lila, but claimed Daniel and Megan were liars. For a moment he seemed reasonable, until his tone shifted. "You don't get it, man. She deserves better than either of us. She'll realize eventually." After Ryan came Sophie Lane, who claimed to be Lila's childhood friend. Then Chris Vale, who sent nothing but cryptic one-liners like, "You'll see soon." Then Mark Dempsey, who apologized for the others and offered to meet in person to explain everything. We even set up a time and place, but he never showed. One by one, new names emerged. Sarah Cho, David Lynn, Hannah Boyd, each with their own angle, their own fragments of a story, and always circling around Lila. Meanwhile, Lila grew harder to reach. She claimed she was swamped with assignments. Sometimes she ignored my texts for days. When I confronted her, she brushed it off. "I don't know what to do about them," she said once, sounding exhausted. "They're crazy. Just ignore them," but ignoring them wasn't easy, because then came Mary. One night, Lila messaged me, "Who's Mary?" I stared at the screen. "What?" She sent me screenshots, texts from an unknown number. "My name is Mary. I'm in love with Alex. He told me he loved me. He slept with me and now he won't call me back." My blood went cold. I told Lila I had no idea who Mary was, but then the texts started coming to me too. "Why aren't you calling me? You said you meant it. I saw you today at the student union." Every location she mentioned, I had actually been there. Was I being followed? I started looking over my shoulder on campus, flinching whenever my phone buzzed. Finally, I called Lila. "I can't do this anymore," I said. "I don't know what's going on, but I know you're connected to it. I'm done." There was silence on the line, then a small, flat voice. "Okay." And that was it. I blocked her number. I blocked every account. And suddenly, everything stopped. A few weeks later, a friend of mine pointed something out. "Dude, almost none of Lila's friends have real profile pictures." I checked. He was right. Daniel's picture? A random Tumblr photo. Chris's? An old photo of Justin Bieber. Ryan's skateboard sunset? A stock photo. Hannah's? Cover art from a book ad. David? A Korean pop star. Even stranger, all their profiles had been created around the same time I met Lila. To this day, I don't know what was real and what wasn't. 2 years later, life moved on. I graduated, got a job, tried not to think about Lila. Then one night, my phone buzzed. An unknown number, but familiar somehow. The text read, "Sorry, Lila." I stared at it until my screen went dark. I never replied. I never heard from her again. But I still wonder, was she behind all of it? The messages, the fake accounts, the stalking? Or was there an entire network of people obsessed with her? I don't know which answer scares me more. I never thought I'd meet someone like her, at least not in the way I did. I had just turned 27, and if I'm being honest, I wasn't exactly in the best place in my life. I had a job I didn't love but tolerated, a tech support role for a software company in Riverbend, a small Midwestern city that most people just drove through without stopping. My days were filled with customer complaints, endless phone calls, and staring at screens until my eyes felt like sandpaper. My social circle had grown thin after college, with most of my old friends either married, moved away, or so consumed by their own routines that we only exchanged the occasional happy birthday text. Dating hadn't exactly been a strong point either. I had been in one long relationship that lasted 3 years, but it ended in a mess of jealousy and mistrust on both sides. After that, I stayed single, telling myself I didn't need anyone. that I'd rather focus on work, on hobbies, on myself. But there were nights where the silence in my apartment was unbearable, and I'd catch myself scrolling endlessly on Tinder, swiping right more out of boredom than real hope. That's when I matched with her. Her name was Lena. She had shoulder-length dark brown hair, sharp green eyes, and this smile that seemed both shy and mischievous at the same time. Her profile was simple. 3 pictures, no long bio, just a line that read, "Looking for someone who actually listens." That line stuck with me because that's what I felt like I'd been missing. Someone who really listened, not just waited for their turn to talk. We started texting late one night, the usual icebreakers at first, but it didn't feel forced. She asked me about my favorite movies, and when I said Prisoners was one of them, she laughed and said, "Okay, so you like the dark stuff." Then she admitted she liked thrillers too, especially ones that left you unsettled long after the credits rolled. I found myself smiling at my phone like an idiot, something I hadn't done in years. Over the next week, our conversations stretched longer and longer. We texted in the mornings before work, on lunch breaks, and late into the night. Lena told me she worked part-time at a bookstore in town and was finishing her last semester at the local university. She loved old black and white films, claimed she could out-eat anyone when it came to sushi, and said she had this strange habit of doodling in the margins of books she read, like she was trying to leave a hidden conversation for whoever found them next. By the 5th day, I decided to ask if she wanted to get dinner. My hands were sweating when I typed it, which felt ridiculous, but when she replied almost immediately with, "Yeah, I'd like that," I actually let out a laugh of relief. We decided on a little Italian restaurant in town called Ferraro's. It wasn't anything fancy, but it had good reviews and a quiet atmosphere, perfect for a first meeting. The night of the date, I was a bundle of nerves. I must have changed shirts 3 times before settling on a button-up that didn't make me look like I was trying too hard. When I pulled up outside her apartment complex, she came down wearing a simple black dress with a denim jacket, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked even better in person. There was a confidence in the way she walked, but her smile when she opened the car door was warm, almost disarming. "Hey," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Hey," I managed, gripping the wheel like it might run away from me. "You nervous?" she teased, raising an eyebrow. "Is it that obvious?" I laughed. "Just a little," she smirked. "Don't worry." I don't bite. The restaurant was cozy, with dim lighting and a smell of garlic and bread that made my stomach growl. Conversation flowed surprisingly well. We talked about shows we'd been watching, childhood memories, even embarrassing stories. At one point, she told me about how she once fell asleep during a final exam in high school, and her teacher had to shake her awake in front of the entire class. I laughed harder than I had in months. After dinner, Lena suggested we catch a movie. "There's a theater not far from here," she said. "They're still showing Captain America, the Winter Soldier." "Have you seen it?" I hadn't, so I agreed. She offered to help navigate since I wasn't familiar with that side of town, so I handed her my phone with the GPS pulled up. When we parked outside the theater, I patted my pocket and froze. "Shit," I muttered. "What?" she asked. "My phone. I think I left it in the car." Lena waved a hand dismissively. "Just leave it. We'll be late if we go back." I hesitated. It wasn't like I needed my phone during the movie, but I had just bought it a week ago. Something about leaving it unattended didn't sit right with me. "I'll be quick," I said. 2 minutes, tops." She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Back at the car, I searched the seats, the floor, even under the mats, but the phone was nowhere. My chest tightened with frustration. Lena leaned against the car, arms crossed. "Seriously?" she said. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." "It's probably at home." "No, I had it when we left the restaurant," I said. "Can you check your bag? Just in case?" She gave me this look, half annoyed, half amused, but opened her handbag anyway. "Nothing," she said, closing it quickly. But something in her tone made me suspicious. A couple parked next to us, and in a moment of desperation I asked them, "Hey, could you do me a favor? Can you call my number?" They agreed, and seconds later my ringtone blared, muffled, but unmistakable, coming from Lena's handbag. My heart dropped. I stared at her, stunned. Lena blinked, then slowly pulled the phone out. "Oh," she said lightly. "I must have grabbed it by mistake." By mistake? The couple exchanged uneasy glances. I thanked them quietly, unlocked my car, and when I turned back, Lena was already walking toward the street. "Wait," I called, jogging after her. "What the hell was that?" She didn't answer. "Lena." I caught up, stepping in front of her. "You took my phone." "Why?" She shrugged, eyes darting away. "You're overreacting." "It was an accident." "No, it wasn't." My voice was sharper now. "You knew it was in your bag. You told me it wasn't." Her face shifted then. Gone was the playful, charming girl from dinner. Her expression was flat, cold, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. "You should just drop it," she said quietly. "Trust me." "Drop it?" "You tried to steal from me." People were starting to notice. Lena's jaw tightened, and without another word she turned and walked away into the night, disappearing around the corner. I stood there, phone in hand, my stomach twisted into knots. That was the last time I saw her. On the drive home, all I could think about was how calculated it felt. The way she tried to stop me from going back for the phone. The way she dismissed my concerns. The way she walked off without a shred of shame. This wasn't an accident. It hit me that she might have done this before, maybe many times, and she probably would again. I got home, sat on the couch, and just stared at my phone. My brand new phone that had almost vanished from my life in a single night. The charm, the laughter, the warmth, none of it was real. It was just bait, and I couldn't help but wonder, what else would she have taken if I hadn't noticed in time? I never thought the summer after high school would mark the beginning of the most terrifying chapter of my life. For most people, that summer is supposed to be about freedom, one last stretch of childhood before college swallows you up. For me, it started like that, but it didn't stay that way for long. My name is Olivia Harris, and I grew up in a quiet suburb just outside Minneapolis. If you've ever lived in a Midwestern neighborhood, you know the kind. Maple-lined streets, neighbors who wave even if they don't know you, and nights so quiet you can hear the sprinklers hissing 2 blocks away. It always felt safe. I guess that's what made it so much worse, because safety, once broken, is something you never fully get back. It was late June, hot and sticky. The kind of weather that clings to you no matter how many fans you run. I was sitting on my bed with my window cracked open, folding clothes into piles for a camping trip with my friends. The cicadas were loud outside, almost soothing, and I had my phone propped between shoulder and ear while chatting with Maya Collins, my best friend since middle school. "Don't forget marshmallows," she said, "and bug spray. You're always the first one to get eaten alive." I laughed, tossing a t-shirt into my duffel. "You act like mosquitoes are my personal curse." "They are. Remember last year? Your legs looked like you had chicken pox." But I was grinning when I heard it, the faintest scratch against the screen of my window. I thought it was a branch at first, but then, out of nowhere, a hand, pale, large, unmistakably a man, slipped through the gap in the screen. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. "What's wrong?" Maya's voice chirped in my ear. I couldn't even answer. My breath caught, and then, before I could stop myself, I screamed. The hand jerked back instantly. I stumbled to the window, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst, and that's when I saw him. A tall figure standing just beyond the glow of our porch light, dressed in black, perfectly still, watching me. My scream must have startled him, because he suddenly darted backward, vanishing into the shadows of our backyard. I dropped the phone, bolted out of my room, and ran straight to my younger brother Ethan's room. If this was a prank, it was the sickest one imaginable. But Ethan was exactly where he always was, sitting cross-legged in front of his computer, headset on, completely lost in his video game. He ripped the headphones off when he saw my face. "Olivia? What the hell? You look like you've seen a ghost." I stammered out what had just happened, but before I could finish, my mom was in the hallway, eyes wide. "What's going on?" We called the police. 2 officers showed up, swept the yard, and found nothing. One of them, a burly man with thinning hair, shrugged and said, "Probably just some drifter cutting through. Nothing to worry about. Just keep your windows locked." They said it like it was no big deal, like I hadn't just seen a man standing outside my window in the middle of the night. But my mom, she didn't buy it. After they left, she muttered, "He'll be back. I can feel it." The very next night, my mom did something that, at the time, I thought was ridiculous. She sat on the back porch in the dark, waiting. I thought she was being paranoid. But around 11:30, I heard her voice sharp, angry. "Hey, who are you? Get away from there." I ran to the door just in time to see the same tall man sprinting across the lawn, melting into the trees. The police came again. Same result. No trace. That was the last time I slept with my window cracked. My dad installed motion sensor lights all around the house. Life slowly went back to normal, or at least it pretended to. But the image of that man standing there stayed with me, burned into my memory. By January, I was ready for something new. Maya and I found an apartment together in downtown Minneapolis. It wasn't anything fancy, just a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old brick building with street parking and a laundromat in the basement. But it was freedom, and that's what mattered. The first time my car was broken into, I told myself it was just city life. But nothing was stolen. The only thing left behind was a single red rose on the passenger seat. I showed Maya, trying to make light of it. "Guess I've got a secret admirer." She wrinkled her nose. "Olivia, that's not romantic. That's creepy." It happened again the following week. And again. Sometimes it was flowers. Once it was candy. Tootsie Rolls, my favorite. Once, horrifyingly, it was a pair of men's boxers. "This isn't random," I whispered one night, staring at the latest gift left in my car. "He knows me." The thought lodged in my chest like a stone. It didn't stop with the car. One Saturday afternoon, I went down to switch my laundry from the washer to the dryer. When I came back to fold it, I realized something. All of my bras and underwear were missing. I stood there staring at the pile, cold dread running down my spine. Later that week, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. My name written in sharp, slanted handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. "I've loved you for years. You don't know me. Not really. But I know you. I've watched the way you laugh, the way you bite your lip when you're nervous. We're meant to be together. You'll understand soon." I kept the letter, tucked it in a folder, and started making plans to move. By spring, I broke the lease and moved in with another friend, Sophie Reed, on the other side of the city. Her building was much safer, key fob entry, cameras, underground parking. I felt secure again. For the first time in months. For a while, nothing happened. I almost let myself breathe. Then Sophie met Lucas Grant. He was handsome in a too-perfect way, tall, well-dressed, a smile that could sell anything. But something about him immediately rubbed me the wrong way. His handshake lingered too long. His eyes studied me like I was an equation he was trying to solve. "Where'd you meet him?" I asked Sophie quietly. "Facebook," she said dreamily. "He messaged me out of nowhere, and we just clicked." That set off alarm bells. But Sophie was glowing with happiness. She'd never had a serious boyfriend before, and she was smitten. Still, every time Lucas came over, I felt it. The way his gaze would slide toward me when Sophie wasn't looking. The way he smiled at me like he knew something I didn't. One evening, I came home from work to find Lucas alone on the couch. Sophie had been called in for a late shift. "Hey," he said casually, sipping a beer. "Sam told me to hang out until she gets back." "Cool," I muttered, grabbing a soda and heading toward my room. Half an hour later, there was a knock on my door. "Olivia," Lucas's voice drawled. "Want to watch a movie?" We should get to know each other better. For Sophie's sake, you know. Against my better judgment, I sat with him in the living room, keeping my eyes glued to the television. At one point, I felt him staring. I snapped, "What?" He just smiled faintly. "I just can't believe it." Believe what?" I demanded. He chuckled and turned back to the screen. Every hair on my arm stood on end. I excused myself and locked my bedroom door for the night. A month later, Sophie and Lucas's 6-month anniversary rolled around. When I got home that evening, there was a massive bouquet of flowers on the table, with a card propped up beside it. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. But the handwriting on the card, it was sharp, slanted, unmistakable. My heart dropped into my stomach. I sprinted to my desk, yanked open the folder, and laid the anniversary card beside the stalker's letter. The handwriting was identical. Lucas was the stalker. My hands shook as I dialed the police. I told them everything, showed them the letters, the photos I'd kept. They dispatched officers immediately. Then I called Sophie. "You need to come home, now. It's Lucas. He's not who you think he is." She was confused, then defensive, but finally agreed. The police met her at work, explained everything. Against their advice, she called Lucas, screaming at him. That was the last time anyone ever saw him. Lucas left behind a duffel bag in Sophie's room. Inside were gym clothes. But in a hidden compartment were 10 photos of me. Some were taken from far away, but one was of me sleeping in my bed. There were also 2 pairs of my underwear, a Starbucks cup with my lipstick on it, and a necklace I hadn't even realized was missing. The police never tracked him down. His name was likely fake. His job, his family, his life all lies. I left the country within months, taking a study abroad opportunity just to put distance between me and Minneapolis. But the truth is, I never really left it behind. I deleted all my social media. I walk with my head up, always scanning. I still wake up in the middle of the night convinced I heard something at my window, because somewhere out there, Lucas or whatever his real name was might still be watching, still waiting, still believing we're meant to be. I should have felt relief that evening when I finally got home, but instead I felt something else, an odd heaviness I couldn't shake. My name is Adrian Cole, 29, a literature teacher at Ridgeway High School in the small town of Hollowbrook. Teaching had never been easy here. Most of the kids were restless, disinterested, and carrying baggage I could only guess at. Every day felt like pushing a boulder uphill, and by the time the final bell rang, I was ready to collapse. The one thing that held me together, the one steady anchor in my life, was my girlfriend, Marissa Hale. We'd met about 1.5 years ago at a bookstore downtown. She was standing in the philosophy aisle, turning over a copy of Camus, and I, nervous as ever, mumbled something about how The Stranger was a terrible first date book. She laughed, rolled her eyes, and that laugh stuck with me. Somehow, despite my awkwardness, we ended up sharing coffee, then dinners, then eventually a lease on this small apartment above a florist's shop. Our routine was sacred. Every night, no matter how drained I was from school, I'd open the door and there she'd be curled on the sofa with a blanket, waiting for me. We'd watch movies, argue over what to order for dinner, talk about books neither of us had the energy to finish. It was ordinary, but it was ours. So when I turned the key that Wednesday evening, stepped into the apartment, and saw the sofa empty, I froze. "Marissa?" I called, dropping my bag by the door. Nothing. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Too still, too staged. I walked into the kitchen and that's when I saw it, a note stuck to the fridge with one of our silly cat magnets. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed. "Adrian, love. I had to leave for a quick work trip. Don't worry, I'll be back Friday night. Miss me until then. Marissa." I just stared at it. A work trip? Marissa worked at Hollow Brew Cafe. They didn't send people on trips. And even if they did, she would have told me. She told me everything. Something about that note chilled me more than I wanted to admit. Still, I forced myself to shrug it off. She'd be back Friday. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she just needed space. But in my gut, I knew. Something was wrong. At school the next morning, I was distracted. "You look like hell," Paul said, sliding into the chair across from me in the staff lounge. Paul was an older teacher, math department, always with a thermos of coffee glued to his hand. "Yeah," I muttered. "Marissa's out of town. Feels weird without her." Paul chuckled. "Couples, man. You spend all that time together and forget how to function alone." Guess so." I forced a laugh. Half the day passed in a blur. I was giving some half-hearted lecture about Shakespeare when one of the students, a sophomore named Lindsay, raised her hand. "Mr. Cole, is the new teacher coming today?" 2000 sang. I frowned. "What new teacher?" She shrugged. "Heard the office hired someone. A woman. Red hair. She was in the office yesterday when my mom came to pick me up." A cold weight sank into my stomach. Red hair. Before Marissa, there was Elena Ward. I don't talk about her. Not to friends, not to colleagues, not even to Marissa. Elena was, how do I put this, obsessive. At first, she was intoxicating. She made me feel like the center of her world. But soon, it became clear that it wasn't love. It was control. She followed me after work to see if I was really going home. She'd go through my phone at night while I slept. Once, she admitted to putting crushed anxiety meds in my food, just to keep me docile, calmer. Leaving her was hell. She threatened me, threatened to ruin my career, spread rumors. I moved to Hollowbrook partly to get away from her. And now, the mention of a new red-haired teacher made my throat dry. It couldn't be her. It couldn't. Later that day, I passed the principal's office. The door opened, and out stepped a woman with sharp red hair. My heart stopped. "Elena," I whispered under my breath. But then she turned, and though her features were eerily familiar, they weren't hers exactly. The principal caught me staring. "Ah, Adrian, this is Scarlett Moore, our new English hire. She'll be in your department. Show her around, would you?" I swallowed hard. "Of course." Scarlett smiled politely, but something in her eyes made my skin crawl. That night, the apartment was still empty. I tried watching one of the action movies Marissa hated, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at the note on the fridge. The typed letters felt cold, impersonal. By Friday, I was counting the hours until she came back. When I got to class, the students were buzzing. "Mr. Cole," one of them said, giggling. "Scarlett likes you." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "She said she used to know you. Said she misses you." My vision blurred for a second. The room spun. I excused myself, ran to the bathroom, and threw up in the sink. I couldn't wait. That evening, I drove home fast, heart hammering. I needed Marissa. I needed to tell her everything, that my ex might be back, that we might not be safe. I parked, sprinted up the stairwell, and shoved open the apartment door. "Marissa, pack your things, we need to." I froze. On the sofa sat Elena. She smiled, crossing her legs casually. "Hello, Adrian." My mouth went dry. "Where's Marissa?" She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "Oh, she's around. Want to see?" She pulled out her phone and tapped a video. My blood turned to ice. Marissa was half buried in the dirt, crying, only her head visible. "What the hell did you do?" I screamed. Elena's smile twisted. "You chose her over me. After everything we had. After what you did to me. You think you can ruin my life and walk away? I never." "You did," she snapped. "You destroyed me. Now I'll destroy you." Before I could move, she hurled the phone against the wall. Then she whispered, "You don't get to play the victim, Adrian." And in one fluid motion, she climbed onto the windowsill and leapt. I screamed, rushing forward, but when I looked down, there was nothing. No body, no trace. The next morning, I got an email, a termination letter. Attached were documents, screenshots, proof of misconduct. Things only Elena could have fabricated, or maybe things she really had on me. twisted out of context. The police came that afternoon. I was arrested under allegations I couldn't even process. Marissa, thankfully, was found safe. Elena hadn't buried her, just staged the video, forced her to play along before letting her go. Marissa left me soon after, unable to cope with the chaos. And me? My career, my reputation, it all went up in flames. Sometimes I wonder if Elena ever really left that night, or if she's still out there, watching, waiting, because sometimes, in the stillness of the apartment, I swear I hear her laugh. I never thought love could feel dangerous. When I first met Clara Jensen, she seemed like the kind of girl people wrote poems about, bright, graceful, always smiling as if she carried the sun with her wherever she went. I wasn't used to people like her being in my orbit. My life, up until then, had been painfully ordinary. I was 21, living in a small apartment in Madison, Wisconsin, while attending the University of Wisconsin. My days revolved around long sociology lectures, ramen dinners, and part-time shifts at a bookstore. I didn't really date much. I told myself it was because of my schedule, but in truth, I never believed anyone would actually choose me. And then Clara appeared. At first, it was just small coincidences. We bumped into each other at a mutual friend's birthday party. Then I saw her in the campus library. A week later, she was jogging at the same park I went to when I needed to clear my head. And finally, the strangest coincidence of all, she moved into the apartment right across the hall from mine. It almost felt like fate was arranging things for us. The first time I actually spoke to her, I was nervous as hell. She was unlocking her door with an armful of groceries, and I blurted out, "Hey, I'm Ethan Cole. I've, seen you around." She turned, balancing a bag of apples against her hip, and gave me a smile that made me forget what I was even saying. "Clara," she replied, brushing a strand of chestnut hair out of her face. "Yeah, I've noticed you too. Guess we're neighbors now." That was all it took. We started talking more often. Coffee in the mornings, bumping into each other in the hallway, then studying together. Within 2 weeks, we were officially dating, and those first 3 weeks, they were pure bliss. Clara seemed like the perfect girlfriend. She laughed at my jokes, remembered every little detail I told her, and made me feel like I finally mattered to someone. But looking back now, I can see all the little red flags I ignored. One evening, I was working on a group project for sociology. My partner, Maya Thompson, was a quiet, intelligent girl who always sat at the back of the class. Our assignment was to organize a focus group discussion with high school students, which meant late planning sessions. We met in the student lounge one evening, laptops out, papers spread everywhere. I got caught up in planning schedules and completely lost track of time. By the time I looked at my phone, I realized I hadn't told Clara I'd be late. "Shit," I muttered. Maya looked up. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. I just forgot to text my girlfriend," I said, pulling out my phone. I dialed Clara, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. A pit formed in my stomach. "Hey, sorry, I need to step out for a minute," I told Maya before grabbing my jacket and heading home. When I walked into my apartment, I froze. Clara was sitting on the floor, shards of glass surrounding her. Dozens of photos were scattered around, photos of me and Maya together. Pictures that had been taken secretly from different angles, at different times. "Clara?" My voice trembled. What is this?" Her eyes were wide, unblinking, her voice flat as she whispered, "Do you still love me?" My chest tightened. "Of course I do. What are you talking about?" She stood, barefoot on broken glass, blood spotting the floor. She walked right up to me, cupped my face with shaking hands, and asked again, "Who is that girl?" "She's my project partner," I explained carefully. Clara's grip tightened. "I don't like her. Get rid of her." Before I could respond, she pressed her lips against mine, her kiss desperate, almost violent. I told myself she was just insecure, that she needed reassurance. But something about the way she stared into me that night, it chilled me. The next day, I asked my professor to switch partners. I didn't even explain, just said I wasn't comfortable. I got reassigned to a male student. Clara was thrilled. For a while, things were peaceful, but cracks started to show. She hated whenever I spoke to other women, even cashiers, classmates, my cousin over FaceTime. She started following me around campus, sitting in the back of lecture halls when she wasn't even enrolled in the class. At night, I'd wake up to find her scrolling through my phone, reading every message. "Clara, stop," I whispered one night, half asleep. Her eyes flashed. "What are you hiding from me?" "I'm not hiding anything," she screamed. She screamed so loudly I thought the neighbors would call the cops. She threatened to kill herself. She threatened to kill me. I wrapped my arms around her, begging her to calm down, whispering apologies even though I hadn't done anything wrong. That night haunted me. I never confronted her about the phone checking again. But in the back of my mind, something broke. Months passed. I became a shadow of myself, isolated, paranoid, exhausted. My friends stopped reaching out. I hadn't seen my parents in nearly a year. One morning, Clara was still asleep. I kissed her forehead, told her I was going to the gym, and instead drove 120 kilometers to my parents' house. The relief was immediate. I laughed with my cousins, ate dinner with my parents, breathed fresh air without fear of my phone buzzing with accusations. But Clara didn't let go. She called me nonstop. When I blocked her number, she found new ones. Then came the photos, a picture of my apartment bedroom, my sheets and duvet shredded to pieces. I called the police. I told them everything, begged them to intervene. They promised to look into it. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. That summer, I met someone new. Her name was Leila Morrison. She was kind, patient, and nothing like Clara. With Leila, I felt normal again. One evening, we were out at a small Italian restaurant. Leila was talking about her internship when I caught sight of a girl at the bar. Red hair, but her face, she looked like Clara. Number, it couldn't be. Clara was supposed to be in a mental facility by now. I shook the thought away, but the pit in my stomach returned. Later that night, I got a text. My blood went cold. It was a picture of Leila. She was tied to a chair, gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Beneath the photo was a message. "Miss me? Come to Leila's place, baby. I'll be waiting." I don't remember driving. I just remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel, my chest heaving with panic. When I reached Leila's house, the front door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly. "Clara?" I whispered. She stepped out of the shadows, her hair now dyed red. She smiled, like this was all a game. "Ethan," she said sweetly, "you came back to me." She led me to the bedroom. Leila was there, tied to a chair, muffled screams spilling through the gag. Her eyes met mine, pleading, terrified. Clara twirled the knife in her hand. "Kiss me. Prove you love me." My heart pounded. I thought fast. I walked to Clara, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, "I missed you." I kissed her, forcing myself to hide the revulsion. For a moment, she melted into me. Her grip on the knife loosened. That was my chance. I grabbed the blade, twisted it out of her hand, and shoved her back. She screamed, clawed at me, bit into my arm. We struggled violently until she tripped, slamming her head against the bed frame. She collapsed, unconscious. I rushed to Leila, tore off the ropes, pulled the gag from her mouth. She sobbed into my chest as I called the police. The truth unraveled in the days that followed. Clara wasn't a student. She'd never been enrolled at the university. She'd fabricated her entire story just to get close to me. She was diagnosed with severe obsessive delusional disorder. This time, she was admitted into a psychiatric facility under court order. But even now, months later, sometimes I wake up at night with the echo of her voice in my ears. "Do you still love me?" And sometimes, I'm afraid of my own answer. I never thought I'd be back in Marlow, the small town where my grandparents used to live. To be honest, it wasn't really my plan. Life had been heavy. And after everything with school and my mom passing years ago, I needed a change of scenery. My girlfriend Claire suggested we take a break from the city and go somewhere quieter for the summer. "You're always talking about that old house," she said one night as we sat on the narrow fire escape outside my dorm room, sharing a cheap bottle of wine. "Why don't we go there? It could be peaceful. Just us, away from everyone." I laughed at first, but the idea stuck with me. The thing was, I hadn't set foot in that house since I was a kid. My grandparents, Robert and Evelyn Darnell, had died mysteriously over 20 years ago in that very house. My parents refused to talk about it, and for most of my childhood, the topic was buried like some family curse. After my mom's cancer took her 5 years ago, Dad remarried quickly, and last year he and his new wife moved to Amsterdam. I stayed behind, finishing school. I thought I was ready to carve my own path, but deep down, I carried this hollow curiosity about that house and what really happened to my grandparents. So when summer came, Claire and I packed a couple of bags and drove into Marlow. She had her auburn hair tied up in a bun, tapping her nails on the dashboard as we passed fields that seemed frozen in time. "This place looks like it hasn't changed in decades," she muttered, peering out the window. "That's Marlow," I said. "Everyone here avoids change." We reached the house by late afternoon. My uncle, Frank, was the one who maintained the property all these years. He wasn't exactly thrilled when I told him I wanted to stay there. On the phone, he sighed heavily. "Eli, I don't know why you'd go poking around in that place. It's not..." He paused, catching himself. "It's just old, drafty, not safe. You and your girlfriend can stay at my place. I've got more than enough room." I thanked him but declined. I wasn't a kid anymore, and I wasn't afraid of some creaky floors or broken windows. When we pulled into the gravel driveway, I felt a strange rush of nostalgia. The Darnell house stood tall, its brick walls weathered but intact, the shutters faded but still clinging on. The air smelled like damp wood and lilacs from the overgrown bushes near the porch. "Wow," Claire whispered. "It's beautiful, in a kind of haunting way." We hauled our bags inside, dust puffing up with every step we took. The house had been kept in decent condition, though it had that stale stillness of a place untouched by life for too long. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I froze. Memories hit me in fragments, my grandmother humming in the kitchen, my grandfather reading by the fire, the faint smell of pipe smoke. I was only 6 when they died, but those images had never left me. "You okay?" Claire asked, slipping her hand into mine. "Yeah," I lied. "Just remembering." We didn't do much exploring that first night. We grabbed some takeout from a small pub in town and brought it back. Over greasy fries and beer, Claire asked questions about my grandparents. "What were they like?" she asked. I leaned back, staring at the yellowed wallpaper. "They were kind, strict sometimes, but they loved me. I remember my grandma always baking. My granddad had this study, full of books. He was always writing in some old notebook." Claire smiled. "Sounds cozy." "Yeah," I said softly, though the word didn't quite fit. That night, as we got into the old master bedroom bed, Claire curled up against me. "Do you ever wonder what really happened?" she whispered. "All the time," I admitted. We fell asleep to the sound of cicadas outside, and surprisingly, I slept peacefully. No nightmares, no ghosts, just silence. The next day, I decided to explore my grandfather's study. The shelves were still stacked with books, some coated in a film of dust. I traced the spines until I pulled out one that felt heavier than the rest. It was an old notebook. On the first page, written in his sharp handwriting, were the words, "The Testament of Robert Darnell." I frowned. The year written below was 1999, the same year he and my grandmother died. My throat tightened as I sat down at the oak table and began to read. It started like a journal. My grandparents had moved into the house after marrying. They had a daughter named Margaret, Maggie, he called her. My heart stopped at the name. I had never heard of her. My father had never mentioned a sister. As I kept reading, the tone shifted. Maggie had grown increasingly withdrawn after they moved into the house. She stopped smiling, spent long hours alone, and eventually refused to leave her room. When my father, Daniel, was born a year later, followed by my uncle Frank, Maggie became even more isolated. By the time she was 17, she had moved herself into the basement. Claire wandered in halfway through my reading. "What's that?" she asked. "My grandfather's journal," I said. My voice cracked. "Claire, they had a daughter. No one ever told me." Her eyes widened. "Wait, you mean your dad had a sister?" I nodded. Apparently, that night after Claire had gone to bed, I couldn't shake the words from the journal. Maggie in the basement, her worsening state, the strange drawings he described, the whispers they swore they heard at night. I grabbed a flashlight and searched until I found a narrow door near the back of the house. My pulse thudded as I descended the creaking stairs. The basement smelled of rot and mildew. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, darkened by age. Crumpled newspaper clippings littered the floor. I picked one up. The headline made my chest tighten. "Tragic deaths of Robert and Evelyn Darnell," daughter questioned. My stomach dropped. Behind me, the faintest sound echoed. A shuffle, a breath, then a low, guttural growl. I spun, flashlight beam shaking across the room. For a split second, I swore I saw a figure, thin, tangled hair, eyes glinting in the dark. My breath caught, and I bolted up the stairs, slamming the door behind me. The next evening, we went to my Uncle Frank's place for dinner. He lived alone, divorced years ago. He greeted us warmly, but I noticed the bandage on his arm. "What happened?" I asked. "Work accident," he muttered too quickly, ushering us inside. We ate, talked, tried to laugh, but the moment I mentioned the journal, Frank's face darkened. "Eli," he said firmly, setting his glass down, "you shouldn't be in that house. Leave tomorrow. Take Claire and go." "Why? What aren't you telling me?" Frank's eyes flickered with something like fear. "Just trust me. Don't dig any deeper." On the drive back, Claire squeezed my hand. "He knows something. You know he does." I nodded but said nothing. The next morning, I couldn't resist. I called a psychiatric facility nearby and asked if they had records of a Margaret Darnell. The nurse hesitated before saying yes, she had been admitted years ago. Released, then readmitted after a violent relapse. My blood ran cold. When Claire insisted on coming with me, I refused. "Number, stay here. If something goes wrong." "Eli," she interrupted, her voice shaking. "We're in this together." We went back down to the basement together. The air was damp, suffocating. As I shone the light, we froze. In the corner, crouched low, was a woman. Her hair hung in matted clumps, her skin pale and streaked with dirt. She looked up slowly, her eyes hollow but piercing. "Margaret," I whispered. Her lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. Then she lunged. Claire screamed. I tried to hold Maggie off, but her strength was inhuman. Her fingers wrapped around my throat, squeezing as the world blurred. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed, and she collapsed beside me. I gasped for air and looked up. Uncle Frank stood in the doorway, a broken chair leg in his hands. His face was pale, trembling. "I told you to leave," he said hoarsely. The police and paramedics arrived within the hour. Margaret was alive but badly injured. They took her away to be readmitted into psychiatric care. Frank sat on the porch steps, head in his hands. I sat beside him. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. He looked up, eyes wet. "Because your father wanted to forget. He couldn't bear the shame, the pain of what she became. We all thought, maybe if we kept her hidden, it would protect the family. But it destroyed us instead. The house was locked up, deemed unsafe." A month later, Frank called me. "They're selling it," he said quietly. "Do you want it?" I looked at Claire, who shook her head firmly, tears in her eyes. "No," I said. "Some places shouldn't belong to anyone." And I never set foot in Marlow again. I woke up to the faint sound of wind brushing against the old wooden shutters of my bedroom window. The ceiling fan above me turned with a low hum, moving the heavy summer air around in slow circles. For a moment, I didn't move. I just laid there, staring at the small cracks in the ceiling of my childhood room. The same cracks I used to trace with my finger when I was a kid, when life was simple, when the world felt like it had walls to keep bad things out. But that was before I lost 3 of my closest friends in an accident I still couldn't fully wrap my head around. Before every memory felt like it was slipping through my fingers, tangled up in grief and guilt. And before Lola came into my life. Lola. Her name felt like air in my chest. When I met her 6 months ago, I thought she was the one thing keeping me sane. She had this quiet magnetism, a way of looking at me with her deep brown eyes like she could see every wound inside me. She didn't flinch when I broke down talking about the police showing up at my apartment, telling me my friends were found dead in a locked car, poisoned by carbon monoxide. She didn't judge when I admitted I couldn't even go to the funerals because the guilt crushed me. Instead, she held me and whispered, "You're safe with me. I'll never leave you." And she didn't. She insisted on driving me back here to my parents' house in the small town of Willow Ridge, saying I needed distance from the city and space to heal. My parents adored her right away, though I noticed Mom sometimes tilted her head when Lola spoke, like she was studying her. Dad, who rarely trusted anyone, told me, "That girl loves you. I can see it. Girl loves you." I believed it too. At least, I wanted to. This morning felt different though. The bed was cold next to me. Our routine was always the same. She woke me with soft nudges or brushed her hand over my face, smiling in that half-asleep way she did. But now the sheets were empty. "Lola?" I called softly, my voice rough from sleep. Silence. I rubbed my eyes and sat up. The house was still, the kind of silence you only hear in an old place when everyone is asleep. I stood, my bare feet hitting the wooden floor, and stretched before making my way toward the bathroom. The light switch clicked, but the bulb just flickered, once before dying. "Damn," I muttered under my breath. I stepped back, deciding I'd wait until later to fix it, but as I moved toward the hallway, something caught me off guard. A smell. It wasn't strong at first, just faint, but enough to wrinkle my nose. A mix of chemicals and something rotten, heavy in the air. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my stomach tightening. No answer. I pulled my t-shirt over my nose and walked toward their bedroom, each step heavier than the last. The smell grew stronger. By the time I reached their door, my chest was tight and my eyes watered. I pushed it open. The room was hazy, filled with fumes that stung my throat. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled toward the bed. Through the blur, I saw them, my parents lying side by side, motionless. "Mom, Dad!" I shouted, shaking them. Their skin was cold. My body locked up. I couldn't breathe. The last of my strength pushed me back toward the hallway, where I dropped to my knees, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. That's when I heard her. "You shouldn't have gone in there, baby," Lola's voice said softly behind me. I turned, relief flooding me at first until I saw her expression. Calm, almost casual. "I told you I'd take care of everything," she continued, stepping closer. My throat closed. "Lola, what did you do?" "They had to go," she said simply, her tone as gentle as if she were talking about cleaning the dishes. "Just like your friends. I can't share you, Adrian. Not with anyone. Not even them." The words hit me like a hammer. My friends. The phone call the police said came from my number, the one I never made. The way she insisted on driving me everywhere. The constant presence. The way she clung to me like I was oxygen. My stomach turned. "You..." Her eyes softened, almost pleading. "Don't say it like that. I saved you. They were taking pieces of you away from me. I couldn't stand it. Now it's just us, Adrian. Just us forever." I stumbled backward until my back hit the wall. "You're insane." Her expression flickered, her lips trembling. "Number, I love you. I love you so much it hurts. And I'll do anything to make sure no one ever comes between us." "You murdered them, Lola." I shouted, my voice breaking. My parents, my friends, you took everything from me. Her face twisted, hurt flashing across her features. I didn't take anything. I gave you freedom. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to grieve anyone. You only need me. Something inside me snapped. Rage, horror, fear, all tangled. I lunged at her, grabbing her by the shoulders. Stop it, stop! I roared. She smiled faintly, almost blissfully, as if my anger was proof of love. Even if you kill me, I'll still be with you, she whispered. I slammed her against the wall, my hands trembling. Her head hit with a dull thud, and her body went limp. She crumpled to the floor. I froze, chest heaving, staring down at her motionless form. Oh God, I muttered, stumbling backward. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, my voice broke. Please send help. My parents are dead. My girlfriend, she killed them. She killed my friends too. Please, I don't know what to do. The minutes that followed blurred together. I locked myself in the bathroom, sliding down against the door, clutching the phone to my chest as if it could protect me. I could still smell the fumes clinging to my clothes. And then I heard it. A soft knock on the door. Adrian. Her voice. Sweet. Patient. You don't need to call them. We'll figure this out together. Just open the door. Please. My blood turned to ice. I had seen her collapse. I had felt the weight of her body go slack. But her voice was steady, coaxing. Baby, I forgive you for hurting me. I know you didn't mean it. Come out, and we'll make it right. Just us. I pressed my back harder against the door, tears streaming down my face. The sound of sirens in the distance was the only thing that kept me conscious, the only thing reminding me that help was coming. But even now, even as I sit here writing this, I swear I can still hear her voice, whispering through the cracks of the night. You're mine, forever.